When Tappei crafted ReZero, he always knew how the series would end. With this in mind, he had a list of potential candidates for the final boss of ReZero, of which Felix was actually considered to be one of them. However, Tappei actually discounted that idea. This video will be looking at who the final boss of ReZero will be, as well as discussing why they would be the final boss and their potential goals. With that said, I can only think of 4 potential end boss characters for the ReZero series. So let's begin. We'll start with the most obvious, Pandora, the Witch of Vainglory. Honestly, despite Pandora's prominence, I do not actually believe she will be the final boss of ReZero. And that's for several reasons. I feel like the Sin Archbishops will be dealt with way before the final arc of ReZero, namely Arc 11, which is the final arc. Pandora, which seems to be the head of the Sin Archbishops, will most likely be killed permanently by Emilia in Arc 9 or Arc 10, which will then lead into the final arc of the story. As of Arc 7, pretty much every Sin Archbishop has been taken care of. Libat and Katos, Regulus Corneus, Beetlejuice are all dead. Sirius and Roy are captured. Louis doesn't have a witch factor anymore, so it seems that she isn't a Sin Archbishop, leaving only Capella as the only active Sin Archbishop, which will most likely be resolved in Arc 8 or whenever Felt next shows up, because Felt and Capella seem to be linked story-wise, meaning that Pandora will most likely be killed by Emilia shortly after. After all, Tappei has alluded that Emilia will of course get her revenge on Pandora. This will most likely coincide with Emilia's final character growth in the series. Tappei has stated that Emilia will undergo 3 main development stages over the course of the series. The first one was in Arc 4, and her final one, in my opinion, will be during Arc 9 or Arc 10 when she finally kills Pandora and redeems the lives of Fortuna and Juice. After all, Pandora was the one which ruined their family, and it's of course implied that Sirius is Fortuna, and of course Juice became Beetlejuice. So of course Emilia will kill Pandora, and Pandora will act as a catalyst to essentially make Emilia a better character, and Emilia will no longer be naive. This will then prepare Emilia for Arc 11, which will be the final arc, as her sort of completed character and personality. As for Pandora's goal, we don't really know what it is. However, we can speculate due to the fact that people like Capella and Pandora seem to be interested in the witches' remains. The witches of old, so the witches like Typhon, Echidna, and so on and so forth. In my Future of ReZero video, I talked about how every arc seems to have a link with the remains of a witch. So for example, Arc 4 was linked with Echidna. Arc 5, the City of Priestella, was linked with Typhon. Arc 6, the Pleiades Watchtower, was theoretically the death of where Daphne was, and it's where, of course, Satella is sealed. So you can see quite a lot of the remains are linked in the story of ReZero. We also know that Sekhmet, who died from the Great Waterfall by falling off, we know from Tappei's Q&As that Subaru will eventually visit the Great Waterfall, meaning that he will come into contact with Sekhmet's remains most likely. It seems like Pandora may be trying to collect them because they're actually used as an energy source. We know this from the fact that Typhon's remains power the City of Priestella. So maybe Pandora is trying to collect all of them so she can of course then use the energy to potentially unseal Satella or some form of action. We don't know, but my bet is that Pandora is collecting the witch's remains to potentially use the energy for some form of goal. The second candidate for the final boss of ReZero, and in my opinion the most likely boss of ReZero, is actually Omega Echidna, and this is for one big reason. We know at the end of the season 2 anime, Omega Echidna gets resurrected. Echidna, the one from the Tea Party, takes over and possesses Ryuzu Shima's body. She is then allowed to walk outside of the sanctuary and she wanders the world. she also has a crystal which contains all of the souls of the other witches, which means that Echidna is a big contender for the final boss of ReZero. We do not know what her goal is, however Tappy has stated that all of the witches will show up in Arc 11, which means that the only potential candidate that we know will survive right to the end of the series is Omega Echidna and the witches, which seems to sort of put them in the prime position to be the final boss of ReZero, considering we do know that Echidna is not someone which has human emotions and she only cares about knowledge. So it does seem like she could be the final boss of the series, and again she will have that sort of connection with Emilia and also with Subaru and Satella. So it does feel like she will be the final boss, considering she will be right at the end of the series in Arc 11, and in my opinion she will be the final boss of the series. However, there are a few more other characters we can actually talk about, and I'll start with them now. Well, Jake from the future here. Whilst I was editing this video, I found this Q&A which you can see on screen, where someone asked Tappy, how long does love last for? And then Tappy gave a response which is very similar to Echidna's why does love fade? This is like Echidna's go-to expression. Why does love fade? Why does love diminish? And you can see the Q&A on screen, but then he puts in quotation marks or brackets the final boss's words. So of course, again, it's more evidence that Echidna will most likely be the final boss. So moving on from Echidna, we now have, of course, another likely candidate, which is the Witch of Envy. Now do keep in mind, I'm making it very distinct when I say the Witch of Envy, so I'm not exactly talking about Satella. As we know, the Witch of Envy is Satella's personality, which is extremely sort of yandere. And of course, the Witch of Envy seems to be the cause of pretty much everything which has gone bad in the world of ReZero. Even though Satella was the one that swallowed half the world, which was confirmed in the Witches After Tea Party, it seems like Satella did it for a reason. At least I believe there is a reason why she swallowed half the world, and the Witch of Envy is of course behind that sort of reasoning. Now, I don't necessarily think the Witch of Envy or Satella will be the final boss anyway, because it feels like they're good characters. I feel like Satella will join the good side alongside the Witch of Envy to defeat the final boss. We do know that Satella is of course sealed. And I mean, like I said before, like Satella could break out of the seal anytime she wants. She's done this in Arc 4, she's done this in Arc 6. She can essentially come out anytime she wants, but she doesn't, which shows that she isn't really a final boss candidate, because she could literally destroy the world whenever she wants, but she doesn't. So to me, it seems like Satella will be a character that will get unsealed later on when Subaru collects every single witch factor, which, by the way, is another reason why we know that the Sin Archbishops and Pandora will most likely be defeated very soon, because Subaru needs those witch factors to free Satella, because again, is a theory that Satella is of course at the Pleiades Watchtower, which we saw at Arc 6. So yeah, maybe the final boss candidate I can sort of think of, which is sort of a crack theory, is Flugel, or some people believe that Flugel is Subaru, so Subaru could be the final boss. Of course, this cannot be the case. Even if Flugel was like a different version of Subaru or something, this is very unlikely, because Flugel was one of the 3 great heroes. If he saved the world from being destroyed, why would he then be the bad guy? It makes no sense to me. So I don't think it'll be Flugel either. So yeah, that's pretty much the 3 candidates, 4 if you include Flugel, to be the final bosses of ReZero, and I do believe that the final boss will be Echidna, the Witch of Greed. So thank you for watching. Do you disagree, or is there anyone that I've missed out? I'll see you guys next time.